Judge Kimball Wood setting a June 15th deadline for lawyers for President Trump and his personal attorney, Michael Cohen, to flag those items seized in the April 9th raid of Cohen's home and office. Attorneys for Cohen pleaded to the judge for more time, laying out a grim picture of what it's been like for their team to get through the 3.7 million files they've received so far. Again, that's on top of the 1 million files coming from a couple of his phones. That all coming from the government, saying that they have people working through the night, sleeping on couches. They even have one staff member, they say, who has a tremor in his hand from going through the files. The judge told Cohen's team if they can't meet that deadline, she will then turn the remainder of the materials over to a taint team, which you might remember is what Cohen's team fought so hard against when all of this started. They wanted that special master, which is in charge now. Cohen's team asked to have until mid-July, but the judge in the case said no to that, Shep.
All right, Laura, one more question. Stormy Daniels' attorney, Michael Avenatti, was there, right?
Oh, he was, yes. And in fact, he had a pretty stern back and forth with the judge about his involvement in the case moving forward. He previously, Michael Avenatti did, filed a motion to intervene in this case on behalf of his client, Stormy Daniels. Judge Wood told him that if she grants his motion, he would need to stop all of his, quote, publicity tours he's been doing, adding that what he's doing now could possibly taint a jury pool. No decisions made on that front. Shep, back to you.
Laura Engel in Manhattan, thank you. And, well, I don't know if it's breaking news or not, but it's certainly a live event at the White House where President Trump is hosting White House Sports and Fitness Day on the South Lawn. The idea here, highlight the benefits of youth sports and make a call to action to improve participation. Let's listen in.
Ever play the game? 13-time All-Star pitcher for the Yankees. I have watched him win so many games. Does winning get boring to you, Mario? No. Never, right? I've watched him win so many. The incredible Mariano Rivera. And I have to tell you, I was with some people the other day, some very knowledgeable baseball people, and they were talking, who is the greatest pitcher ever? And you don't think of a reliever as the greatest. And three of them said Mariano was the greatest to ever pitch. I would say that's not bad, right? You've heard it before. You've heard that, right? He's heard that before. Second, a giant of American football, an incredible guy. I know him, he's my friend. And he was a big supporter right from the beginning. It's always good when they know you and they support you. If they know you and they don't support you, that's trouble, right? The great Herschel Walker. What an amazing guy. Thanks, Herschel. And finally, three-time Olympic gold medalist in beach volleyball, the really incredible, and I've watched her so much, mostly on television, unfortunately, Misty May Trainer. Incredible talent. And, you know, we have Bill Belichick is also, and he's working already with the team, but he's one of the great coaches ever, without question, and he's my friend. And we have the Wake Forest NCAA championship tennis team here. Where are they? Are they around here someplace? Oh, look at these guys. One of them 6'11". I assume he has a very, very powerful serve, and Patrick is back there. But congratulations. That's a tremendous achievement. They've won just about everything in tennis. That team is fantastic. And we have a beautiful tennis court if you guys want to practice, okay? Anytime. So it's Wake Forest. And there's a man that went to Wake Forest named Arnold Palmer. And not a bad golfer, right? Not a bad golfer. He was something special. The Demon Deacons tennis team, thank you very much. It's great that you're here. Congratulations. So all of these titans of American sport know that many of life's most valuable lessons are learned on the field of competition. Their young Americans will discover, that's what they do, they discover, they're learning all the time, the importance of teamwork, social skills. Do I have social skills? I don't know. I have social media, that's for sure. I don't know about skill, but I have a lot of media. And the ability to overcome adversity, making lifelong friends all along the way. The skills learned out on the track field, and the court, and the diamond, and the gridiron, and the golf course, and those tennis courts are skills that will serve young Americans for the rest of their lives. I want to thank all of the council members who are here with us today, incredible group of people. Each of you joined this important effort because athletes have meant so much to your own lives, and you want to share that with great love and great affection for the next generation. People have tremendous respect for these great athletes. I grew up with so much respect for the athletes. You know that sports teach young people the value of patience and perseverance, hard work and determination. You also know these experiences can't be replicated on a cell phone or a game console. They really have to be learned and lived on the field of practice with lots of sweat, and lots of hard work, and lots of determination, and you winners all. Participating in sports builds character, forges friendships, tears down barriers, and brings people from all walks of life closer together. I've loved sports all of my life. I always loved the people of sports, but I've loved sports all of my life. Sports also helps kids stay off the street and stay out of trouble. Students who participate in sports have up to 40% higher test scores. That one I've never heard. That's pretty impressive. That's pretty impressive. Are 15% more likely to attend college and have 8% higher annual earnings later on. Yet in recent years, youth participation in sports has been declining. In 2016, only 37% of young kids play team sports on a regular basis, down from 45% from 10 years ago, and the decline has been even worse among students from low-income families. We must reverse these trends, and we will. We're making it possible for you to do that. Therefore, for the first time in history, I have directed this council to work with the White House and Secretary Azar to develop a national strategy to increase youth participation. Can you handle it? He can handle a lot, this guy. We want every American child to know the amazing feeling when they serve that final ace, like our great team over there. They served a lot of aces, didn't you? When they beat the buzzer, when they drive across that goal line, or when they hit it out of the park. We want them to experience the satisfaction that comes with knowing you left it all on the field. A very great expression. We use it in business. We use it in everything. You left it on the field. And we got that expression from sports. But most of all, we want our youth to learn these valuable lessons while creating opportunities for a better future for themselves, their families, and their great communities that they love. To begin the work of the President's Council and to underscore just how important sports are for America's youth, it's now my honor to kick off an exciting White House Field Day. That's very, very valuable grass that you're sitting on, all right? Doesn't get any more valuable. We have volleyball, Christy Bay. We have soccer, track and field, baseball, flag football, and we have golf. I love golf. So to everyone here today, I say, work hard, get in the game, play to win, and most of all, have a good time, have fun. Thank you all for being in the White House. This is a very special day. It's a very special place. And have a great life. We have a great country. Have a great life. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all very much.
President at the White House celebrating sports and fitness, and Blake Berman watching on. Scheduled event, brought in a lot of young folks.
Yep, and the point here, Shepard, from the White House is what you just heard the president say, that the participation in team sports among American youth is declining. You heard him rattle off the stats there. Basically, over the last 10 years, it's declined from 45 to 37%. The participation among 14-year-old girls in team sports, it's twice the rate of dropping out as boys. One of the issues that the White House highlights as well is now in many high schools you need to pay to be on the team on the sport for that team, whether it's transportation or equipment, something along the lines of that. The White House wants to tackle those issues, so they are setting up this initiative that they're going to be rolling out here over the upcoming months, they say, into the Summer Olympics and the Paralympics as well, to try to address this issue of participation in sports. As you know, it is a very tough decision these days for moms, dads, aunts, uncles, brothers, sisters, caregivers, etc. Of what do you do? Do you roll out the soccer ball for the kid, or do you let them, go on this thing on the phone or on the tablet and just kind of sit there and go off on the side? So the White House wants to get kids involved, and that is why you're seeing the president, the White House, highlight it on this day. Let's listen into the president.
People, incredible winners. Just say a few words, would you?
Well, man, for us, especially for me as a Latin person coming from small Panama, it's a privilege and honor for me to be here, and especially in front of the kids. You have a team that we want to do whatever it takes to help you, to make you better, and to go outside and play. Thank you.
So
The great closer for the New York Yankees, Mariano Rivera.
I wanted to ask this question. I've watched you so many years. You threw a heavy ball. I've never seen so many bats break. He'd throw a pitch and then hit, and the bat would break. Exactly how do you do that? Can you explain that, please?
Well, it's one explanation. That was a pitch from heaven.
That's right. It's called talent. Mr. Mayor, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ivanka, for giving us this honor and nomination to be co-chairs of this, what will be a wonderful council that is for the youth. I wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for great coaches and the many opportunities to participate in many different sports. Volleyball wasn't my first sport, soccer was. So I was a big soccer player, and now I'm into golf, which I love. And with my body breaking down, it's a better game to be with. But you guys have all this power built up in these men and women behind us, and we're going to be like a freight train, doing everything that we can to pave a way for you guys to be the most successful that you can be. And we have the biggest backers to allow us to do that. So I want to thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, come up.
Well, this is an honor for me to be on the Fitness Council, because fitness has been my life. And it's an honor for me just to be on a winning team again, along with the group back here, because after being with them for a few days, I can tell they're on fire. And being on fire meaning we're going to get something done. And that's why I'm happy to be here. I want to thank Ivanka, President, Ms. Azar. Hey, God bless you guys. Thank you.
Thank you. So let's all go now and have a good time, okay? Let's have a good time. Come on.
We got the whistle. Do you have the whistle?
That was fun, Blake. Some heroes up there. Herschel Walker, watched him run against the Rebels for more hundreds of yards than I'd like to mention. And the Mariano cutter was certainly a lot of fun to watch, unless you were a Boston Red Sox.
It's one of the perks of being the president, right? President Obama used to have a bunch of the basketball players around that he would shoot hoops with. This president, a New Yorker, gets, I wouldn't say the greatest New York Yankees pitcher of all time. Maybe, I don't know, Babe Ruth. I'll let you chime in. But one of them, certainly of our era, Mariano Rivera here at the White House, Herschel Walker, who you just mentioned. What you're going to see now on the south lawn of the White House, there's a bunch of different setups, fields, makeshift for the day at least, football, golf, tennis. The president ran through them, and the president will go from event to event. So one thing to keep an eye on here, Shepard, is when the cameras follow the president, and so too the reporters, what questions are shouted out, and
will he respond?
Yep, exactly.
On the matter of there are a number of them. Roseanne is a story again today because the president tweeted about it. He actually didn't tweet about Roseanne. He really tweeted about Bob Iger of ABC, sort of changing the subject a little bit there. But let's listen in here. Herschel Walker, the president, speaking to the bunch of them, and the race is on.
Cameras. Then you get the Baseball station.
Hey, Blake, who are all the kids who were on the lawn there today, and how'd they get the invite?
Yeah, not entirely sure. It's a great question. I'm sure they got some from the local schools here. Don't exactly know. I don't believe we were given a list, but it is a beautiful day here. Nonetheless, in Washington, D.C., about 75 degrees, overcast. The South Lawn, if you've never been out there, it is probably the best view that you get here in Washington, with the Washington Monument in the background, the White House right there in the forefront as well. So it is certainly going to be a memory, no doubt, for these children as they get to play on the White House lawn and do so with some of the greatest ever in their sports.
Good stuff. Absolutely love it. Thank you. If you get to talk to Mariano, send him lots of love. He was up in here one day. What a fantastic guy. Speaking of fantastic guys and some very good news, the former President George W. Bush is doing pretty well, but staying in the hospital for now. His spokesman tweeted today, President George H.W. Bush continues to be talkative and in good spirits as doctors at Southern Maine Healthcare address his blood pressure. Those treatments are expected to take several more days. He is now 93 years old, President Bush, the 41st. He checked himself into the hospital, or his helpers did, on Sunday. His spokesman said that President Bush Sr. had low blood pressure and some fatigue, and that they took him in there out of an abundance of caution. Of course, it comes a little more than a month after the death of his wife, the former First Lady, Barbara Bush. He spent nearly 2 weeks in the hospital after her funeral for an infection that spread to his blood. The last moments of the trading day on Wall Street, and what a day it's been there. The Dow has been racing toward the ceiling. You may remember yesterday the Dow took a bath because there were concerns about Italy. The Italians are having a very hard time forming a government. It looks like snap elections may be necessary. It looked, at least yesterday, to investors like maybe the EU or the...
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maria Bartiromo, in today for Neil Cavuto, and this is Your World. Players from both sides will be descending on Manhattan late this afternoon. North Korea's top envoy already in town. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo set to touch down in the next hour. The fate of that on-again, off-again summit hanging in the balance right now to Fox's David Lee Miller, where it's all about to go down. David, good afternoon to you.
Hello, Maria, from the east side of Manhattan. Just a short time ago, the Korean diplomat you're talking about arrived here in New York, Kim Young-chol. He's the former spy boss for North Korea. He's also a former four-star general. But perhaps his most important credential is that he is a close and trusted confidant of Kim Jong-un. He arrived this afternoon at JFK Airport on board an Air China airliner from Beijing. Reportedly, there are 5 others in his delegation. The U.S. granted Kim Young-chol a sanctions travel waiver to make this trip. Moments ago, he entered his hotel, which is just a few blocks from the United Nations. It is frequently used for foreign delegations. Now, as for the meetings with Mike Pompeo, there are multiple meetings that are set. In a few hours' time, the two men are going to sit face-to-face and have dinner. They have met at least twice before. Exactly what they're going to discuss about the nuclear program is not entirely clear, but I can tell you that in addition to what's happening here in New York, Maria, there are 2 other meetings this week taking place overseas between the U.S. and North Korean delegations. In Singapore, they are discussing the logistics of a possible summit, and in the demilitarized zone, they are discussing the components of a possible agenda for a presidential summit. But make no mistake about it, what's happening here in New York City and will be taking place in the next 24 hours or so could very well make or break the possibility of a summit between Kim Jong-un and President Trump. And lastly, underscoring just how significant this diplomat is, he is the highest ranking North Korean diplomat to come to the United States in 18 years. The meeting between Pompeo and the North Korean slated to take place at least over dinner in the next few hours.
So what are you expecting, David, once this meeting does take place? What can we expect in terms of the process and the details of June 12th?
I think this meeting is going to either put up a stop sign or the green light as to whether or not the North Koreans are going to be cooperative when it comes to holding a summit in Singapore on June 12th. Just a short time ago, the White House said that June 12th is still on the drawing board, but I think much will depend on the outcome of this meeting. The North Koreans are going to have to show a willingness to meet some of the U.S. demands to start the process of dismantling their nuclear program. That said, according to one report that was released a short time ago, one expert has said that dismantling that program is going to take as long as 15 years. It's a very complicated program that's been in place for decades, but the U.S. is going to want to see some honesty and some commitment to meeting the obligation of dismantling this program.
David, thank you. David Lee Miller there. Well, let's get to retired Army Brigadier General Anthony Tata joining us right now. General, it's good to see you this afternoon. Thanks for being here. What are your expectations for the meeting today going into this planned summit?
Well, I think what Secretary Pompeo is doing, Maria, is negotiating the terms that the United States needs to see from North Korea regarding denuclearization, but also laying a roadmap out for what remember, he talked about North Korea being on par with South Korea eventually economically. And I think that's probably the quid pro quo here, is that denuclearization leads to economic prosperity for North Korea. And I think that's a fair deal, a fair trade, ultimately, and whether it takes 5 years, 10 years, whatever, they're the same people. I've been over there. I've been in the DMZ. I've been in South Korea. I know the families are split there, and it's the same work ethic, the same people. So there's no reason to believe that North Korea can't prosper economically, given the opportunity and the infrastructure that would be required to do so. In meantime, you've got the logistics happening that point to a meeting somewhere. I mean, logistics in the DMZ and then logistics in Singapore taking place. You have people working very hard because, the summit is largely a scripted affair for the most part. And so you want to have every detail ironed out, and that's what Secretary Pompeo is doing right now, is making sure that it's worth the president's time to fly to wherever he's flying.
Sure. Do you think that Kim Jong-un would agree to completely dismantle, completely denuclearize before that meeting? I mean, you just heard David Lee Miller saying this is a long process, even if he were to agree to that.
Yeah, I think he would. I think the trade-off, we got to remember, the belief is that Kim Jong-un was educated in Switzerland. He's been exposed to the West. And if you look at the history of North Korea, his grandfather and father came in with one vision, which is very typical of this hermit kingdom. The grandfather's vision was a self-reliant state. The father's vision was a powerful military. Kim Jong-un came in with two visions, one being a nuclear power, the other being an economic power. And so he may be willing to trade off the nuclear power to be an economic power. And so I think this is part of his plan to get to where, historic opportunity here to actually make North Korea a viable economic entity as opposed to what it is today, which is a bankrupt state.
Yeah, and you think that happens pretty soon into it once we know that these countries have agreed to certain principles? You think economic activity begins?
Well, I think there's a lot of infrastructure that needs to be built, and so I think that's the first thing, is that airports and ports and roads and all of that connecting small towns to bigger cities and creating an opportunity for the North Korean people and the North Korean government, and you got to take a look at all the graft and corruption that you have there, and so it's not I'm not saying it's an easy road to travel, but what I'm saying is it's a viable road, and one where I think there's a lot of opportunity internationally to come in and help build out North Korea so that they can be this prosperous member of the League of Nations, so to speak.
Sure, so, viable and quite extraordinary, by the way. General, it's great to get your insights. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Maria.
We'll see you soon, sir. Stocks, meanwhile, big rally underway, just finishing, and as you see, the market is closed. Any fears over a possible trade war really just melted away, and the uncertainty over a summit with North Korea also taking a backseat. The Dow Jones Industrial Average surging better than 300 points today, up to 24,667. The Nasdaq and the S&P 500 also rallying and now settled after yesterday's sell-off, a complete reversal of trading today. President Trump, meanwhile, meanwhile, breaking his silence on the Roseanne scandal, but it is not a response his critics necessarily like. Did he give them even more ammunition to attack? And how did Press Secretary Sarah Sanders handle it when they did? Howie Kurtz, Diamonds and Silk, all coming up.
I've spoken to Roseanne Barr, who we know has been a longtime friend of his, and why did he choose to address the ABC apology instead of the underlying issue of concerns about a racist comment that she tweeted out?
He's simply pointing out the bias. The president's pointing to the hypocrisy in the media, saying that the most horrible things about this president, and nobody addresses it. Where was Bob Iger's apology to the White House staff for Jamel Hill calling the president and anyone associated with him a white supremacist? To Christians around the world for Joy Behar calling Christianity a mental illness? Where was the apology for Kathy Griffin going on a profane rant against the president on The View after a photo showed her holding President Trump's decapitated head? And where was the apology from Bob Iger for ESPN hiring Keith Olbermann after his numerous expletive-laced tweets attacking the president as a Nazi and even expanding Olbermann's role after that attack against the president's family? This is a double standard that the president is speaking about. No one is defending her comments. They're inappropriate, but that's what the point that he was making.
There's White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders defending the president's tweet today about the Roseanne scandal and Disney CEO Bob Iger. Did the tweet today, though, give the president's media critics even more ammunition to attack? Trump supporters, Diamond and Silk, are coming up to talk about that. But first, let's get some perspective from the host of Media Buzz here on Fox, Howie Kurtz. Howie, it's always a pleasure to see you. What's your take?
Maria. Well, I was a little surprised that the president didn't do a little perfunctory criticism of Roseanne Barr's racist tweet about Valerie Jarrett and then make his larger point. Now, Sarah Sanders asked some good questions, like obviously, for example, Kathy Griffin, she was dumped by CNN. She didn't do that, I guess she did talk on ABC's The View. And there is a bit of a double standard, but the truth is, when it comes to these matters, every media organization makes its own judgments about whether you've gone too far. In the case of Roseanne, ABC executives very swiftly saying because she touched the third rail of racism that she and the very lucrative show that they had brought back had to go.
Yeah. Look, you know, I was looking at one piece earlier, and it was about Keith Olbermann and the incredible tweets that Keith Olbermann has had. I mean, F-bombs everywhere, Howie, and these criticisms and F-bombs against President Trump consistently. And he just got an expanded role at ESPN, owned by Disney.
Right. Now, yeah, the things that Olbermann had been tweeting and saying, goes beyond bad language. I mean, just calling for people to be locked up and that sort of thing.
Right.
Now, ESPN could say, well, we're just bringing you back to talk sports. And he wasn't an ESPN employee at the time. He had left and come back. But the bottom line is, if President Trump was not the target, if Valerie Jarrett was the target, would ESPN feel free to bring somebody like Olbermann back even to talk about baseball and football? So it does sort of depend, because there was a media uproar whenever, a liberal is under attack. And the president, we're maybe so accustomed, so numb now to the kind of personal vicious criticism that he gets that sometimes his critics kind of skate when they cross the line.
Right. If you are a Donald Trump supporter or a conservative thinker, it's a different standard, it appears. I mean, look at even Joy Behar on The View. You just mentioned some of the comments she's made on ABC News.
And mocking Vice President Pence, she did apologize for that, but she had to be prodded into it. I do think ABC deserves credit for bringing back the Roseanne show in the first place, with it specifically tailoring it to people who happen to like this president and a huge chunk of the country. And it was a cultural and sensational smash. But ABC executives also knew what they were getting with Roseanne Barr. She has years and years of spewing conspiracy theories and unproven charges. So they took a gamble here that she could create a hit show, which she did, and that she would kind of maybe behave herself on the Twitter, which she did not. And unfortunately, not only is the show going away, but the hundreds of people who worked for that show losing their jobs as well.
Yeah, that's really the sad part of it all. A lot of people actually impacted. But there's also that phone call that the president mentioned in that tweet, the phone call that CEO Bob Iger made to Valerie Jarrett and not to President Trump.
Look, I give Iger credit for making a quick decision and for reaching out to Valerie Jarrett, but when you see some of this stuff, particularly this case with Jamel Hill, ESPN did nothing when she tweeted this stuff about calling him a bigot and a white supremacist and ignorant. Nothing happened. Later, she was suspended, ironically, for a tweet about the Dallas Cowboys, and she's since left that show. But the White House does score some points here by pointing to the media hypocrisy. However, I think it would have been a smarter political strategy for the president to just say he doesn't approve of that kind of language, the imagery about Valerie Jarrett and an ape. And then he could have scored points perhaps even more effectively.
Yeah, that's very good analysis, as always. Howie, good to talk with you. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Maria.
Howie Kurtz. Real Valerie Jarrett suggesting that Roseanne's racism tweet came from the top down, as in President Trump. What do Diamond and Silk think of that? They're here with me, and I mean really here in the studio. There they are in the green room, about to come out. Back in a moment right here. Welcome back. Valerie Jarrett is now speaking out on what Roseanne tweeted out, suggesting to MSNBC that Roseanne is not the only one who deserves some of the blame. Take a listen.
Do you feel like this president has set a tone that has made people feel increasingly empowered to say those kinds of things?
Well, this is what I think, Chris. I think tone does start at the top, and we like to look up to our president and feel as though he reflects the values of our country. But I also think every individual citizen has a responsibility, too.
She says some of it comes from the top, as in President Trump. What do social media stars Diamond and Silk think about that? Ladies, good to see you both. Thank you so much for joining us. So you heard Valerie Jarrett. What do you think?
Well, of course, you know, I don't agree with what she said about blaming our president for what someone tweeted. Listen, first of all, Roseanne, let me just say this here. She is not a racist. She made bad judgments when she tweeted out something that was a little off the cuff, and she apologized for it. Now, where's the apologies from all of the other people like the Joy Beharts, Whoopi Goldberg, Sonny Hostin, Jimmy Kimmel? Where are the apologies from those people that work for ABC as well?
Right.
You know, why haven't their shows been canned? Because they've said some off-the-cuff stuff about our president and about conservatives, about people that support our president.
Well, I'll tell you, I was reading the Keith Olbermann tweets just earlier just to get caught up on this, and I couldn't believe some of the things that he has said on Twitter with the F-bombs and the pushback on President Trump. And then you just heard Howie Kurtz mention Joy Behar as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we had to block Keith Olbermann on Twitter because he's so nasty.
Very nasty.
So I don't get the hypocrisy is so real on both sides. Listen, if we're going to open up the conversation, I know Valerie said that this is a teachable moment. Well, if this is a teachable moment, how about we open up open it up? If we're going to talk about racism, let's talk about it on one side, because the word monkey, you know, black people call us that.
That's right. And we need to talk about it on both sides.
On both sides. This is not one-sided.
That's right.
It's not one-sided. It's on both sides. We're called monkeys. We're called coons and all kinds of derogatory names.
That's right.
And listen, you teach people how to treat you. So everybody want to be mad at Roseanne, who happens to be a white woman. You want to call her a racist. Well, what about the racism on the other side?
That's
we have our black brothers and sisters calling other black brothers and sisters all kinds of derogatory names. Yes, we have to. If we're going to have a conversation, let's tell the truth about the whole conversation and not just be one-sided.
So what do we do about it?
Well, what do we do about it? We stop calling each other names. We come to the table and we talk about it. And I don't think that her show should have been canned. I think that this would have been a teachable moment to be on the show. Let this play out on the show, we know how to treat each other.
You know, it feels like if you're a Trump supporter, there's just no room for error. She obviously made a big mistake.
And she apologized.
But there's no room for error, especially if you have a conservative mentality.
And that is not fair. And that's where the hypocrisy come in, and that has how it's got to stop.
And she apologized for it. That's the number one thing. She was woman enough to apologize for it. When she saw that the joke fell flat, she apologized for it. Okay, but we still have yet to wait on other people from the left. We was really astounded, by the way. They are beating this lady up over the head about racism when they are the one that does a lot of the racism. If you go to the Diamond and Silk Wall of Shame, you will see so many derogatory remarks made about us from other black people, from other people that is speaking out, talking about this person is racist. One tweet, one bad joke don't make you a racist.
That's right.
That's her.
Yeah.
So was it appropriate? What do you think happens with Roseanne now? I mean, was it appropriate that she was the show was canceled, and do you think it gets picked up by somebody else? I mean, the show was incredibly successful.
It was a very successful show. I hope it get picked up by someone else if ABC don't want to deal with it or whatever. Listen, I think everybody deserves to be forgiven.
Yeah.
We know.
But if you cancel her show, look, there's some more shows that's on ABC
that needs to be canceled. We can cancel The View. We can cancel Jimmy Kimmel. Some of those people have said the most derogatory things. I can't watch that.
Exactly.
So if you want to play that tick for tack, come on, let's do it.
Well, that's a good point, because Jimmy Kimmel will say, look, I'm a comedian. This is what I do.
Well, she's a comedian, too. She's a comedian.
But she wasn't making a joke when she put that tweet out.
Well, she said she was making a joke. So I want to give her the benefit of the doubt.
That's right.
She said she was making a joke. She apologized for it. Listen, a comedian just called us bootlickers and coons. But we put it out on Twitter and told him to take it down, and he did. So I'm not going to put him on blast. But the deal is, it happens.
Wow.
You know, so...
But you also have had your challenges with Twitter in it itself.
Absolutely. Twitter, Facebook. It's... The whole thing. Being a conservative.
Do you think that's because you're conservative?
It's because we're conservative and we support this president.
That's right.
You got to realize how he won this through social media.
Yes.
We use social media, and he is now the president of the United States. They don't like that. So they're going to do everything they can to block us and to stop us.
And they look at us as a double threat. We're two black women, we're conservative, and we love our president. Okay, a triple threat.
Yeah. No, but I think you make really good points. I mean, in terms of social media, people are moving so fast. They just say things like this. I mean, you know, I've seen it myself, and just you say things and then say, oh gosh, why did I say that? We should have a little more forgiveness for that, given that we're all moving so fast. And having said that, there's no room. There's no tolerance for
racism.
Just
calm it down. There is no tolerance for that, for any kind of racism on either side. It can't be one-sided here. That's what I'm trying to make. We can't always point the finger at every white person when my black brothers and sisters is calling us out of our name and calling us the same derogatory name. Ben Carson was just called a porch monkey. Nobody said nothing about that journalist, yet everybody want to go after Roseanne.
A journalist called him that.
Well, this is what we're hearing. Yes.
Right.
And she took the tweet down, the so-called journalist took the tweet down.
But didn't apologize.
But didn't apologize
That's
for it.
right.
But you see, it can't be a double standard. You know, racism is not just about white. Racism, if you are spewing it, then you need to stop doing it.
That's right.
It's ignorance across the board.
Absolutely.
And it comes in many forms.
All the way across the board.
So have you heard from Roseanne? What do you think about her response?
Listen, I just, if it was me, I would sort of get off of Twitter for a minute and just calm it down.
Give it a break.
Just give it a break. You know, you don't have to be on the defense about everything.
But the president responding, I'm just talking to Howie Kurtz about this, the president responding, sort of wading into this controversy, is giving some people more ammunition to attack President Trump. You know that.
But here's the deal. He made perfectly sense when he said it. All of these people on ABC attacks him, but that producer, whoever that was, they didn't call and say, you know what, Mr. President, we're sorry, we apologize about that. You know what I mean? The hypocrisy. It cannot be one-sided, and it's one-sided. So I'm happy that the president weighed in way he weighed in.
But the president is not afraid to say, you know, Lion Ted or, you know.
Okay, that was doing a primary. That was doing a primary.
Chuck Todd, Sleepy Eyes. I mean, he's not afraid to throw it.
Well, but these people have thrown it to him.
That's right.
These people have said the most damnable things.
And derogatory
things. You don't do that to a sitting president. Imagine if people would have done that to Obama. All chains and fences would have broke loose. We wouldn't know our country today.
And here's the crazy thing. They do it on a daily basis. Roseanne's show came on once a week. These people do it on a daily basis and no apology at all. They call him a xenophobe, homophobe, all these other different phobes. I'm waiting on them to call him a germaphobe. They just call him all of these different names, racist name, call him a racist. They don't have a problem sitting there saying he's a racist. Okay? Donald Trump, our president, is not a racist. He's a realist, and the only color he sees is green, and he wants everybody, including the naysayers, to have something.
That's right. He wants us to be prosperous.
That's right.
And then, by the way, it's happening.
It is.
An economy that is growing. Let me ask you, because of your conservative views, you're sort of out there, and you're up for attack. And I know that I've watched this. Have you always been conservative?
Well, we've always been conservative in our thought and our thinking process, but we tended to vote Democrat because we were conditioned. But we found that just because you're black didn't mean you had to vote Democrat. We say you can get off of that, what we call Democrat plantation, and you can vote for something different. And when we saw then Donald Trump, now President Trump, we wanted something different, and that's why we voted for him.
That's really interesting. So you just sort of went with the herd, right? And you just went went with Democrats.
Condition. It's condition.
That's right.
You're raised that way.
Lifelong Democrats. Being lifelong Democrats, they tell you that you have to vote Democrat. Whoever the head of the ticket is, that's who you vote for.
Even if your life hadn't changed in forever, even if you weren't liking the policies, if the policies were actually working against you.
But they would tell you stuff like, they would say stuff like, well, you may not be able to eat under a Republican. But that goes all the way back to the Jim Crow days created by the Democrats. So you got to know your history. When we started doing our history about the Democratic Party, it was time to ditch the Democratic Party. That's why we started the Ditch and Switch Now movement back in September of 2015, because we wanted everybody to switch to Republican to vote for Donald Trump.
A lot of really good points, ladies. You think the midterms are going to be successful for the Republicans?
I'm looking for them to be successful for the Republican Party.
That's right. Because they were talking about this blue wave, and it seems to be sort of in the back seat right now.
Oh, no.
Because of the policies coming out of the Trump administration that have had impact.
That's right. Be sure to vote right, or you're going to get left.
That's right.
Wow. Diamond and Silk. Great to see you, ladies.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. A pleasure to talk with you both. President Trump just putting Attorney General Jeff Sessions back in the doghouse, meanwhile. But is the Justice... Welcome back. President Trump slamming Attorney General Jeff Sessions this morning. Here's Rudy Giuliani speaking to reporters.
September 1st, mid-September, he's clearly doing a call.
So will he fire him if he doesn't file the report by September?
I don't think he's going to fire Mueller. Mueller is creating his own problems.
Do you think?
Ladies and gentlemen, please follow your leader to the next sports station.
Want to see the investigation stretch out past the midterm election?
Damn right they do. It may be a mistake. It may be the American people have concluded that impeachment is not proper. They're going to do everything they can to say they aren't going to impeach him. Everybody in this town knows they do.
Why was Emmett Flood at that? What exactly did you mean?
Meaning meddling in the election. Doing Hillary in July, doing Hillary again in late October, and then pulling back on the investigation the weekend before the election. Horrible. You're going to get a report from Horowitz, I believe, that'll explain all that.
Do you know when that's coming?
Thank you. I don't.
Do you think it's appropriate for Emmett Flood to be at that DOJ?
Rudy Giuliani just referring to the IG report. Michael Horowitz coming out with the Inspector General report. We're expecting it this week, and it should be really telling in terms of what went on during the 2016 election with regard to the Hillary Clinton email scandal. Blake Berman is at the White House right now with a lot more. Blake, good afternoon.
Maria, good afternoon to you as well. What you just watched there, Rudy Giuliani on the South Lawn. There was a sports and fitness event that was going on. Giuliani, the president's attorney as it relates to the Russia investigation, just decided to walk up to the cameras and answer a few questions there, as you just saw. Speaking of the investigation, the New York Times is reporting this morning that there was a certain instance back in March of 2017 that, according to the Times, has caught the eye of the special counsel Robert Mueller, and it is this. The Times reports that at Mar-a-Lago in that month, President Trump berated the Attorney General Jeff Sessions for Sessions' decision in the month prior to, or in the days and weeks prior, to recuse himself from the Russia investigation. And the Times reports that the president had asked his Attorney General to reverse his decision. Well, earlier today, the South Carolina Congressman Trey Gowdy appeared on the CBS Morning Show and was asked about that Times report, and this is what he said right here. Listen.
I would be frustrated too. That's how I read that is Senator Sessions, why didn't you tell me this before I picked you? There are lots of really good lawyers in the country. He could have picked someone else.
So right after that, from the president's Twitter feed, he quoted that portion of the Gowdy interview, and the president then topped it off with this, writing, quote, "And I wish I did," as if he wished he had picked another attorney general, someone other than Jeff Sessions. The White House press secretary Sarah Sanders was asked at the afternoon briefing just a little while ago, if the president is so upset with his attorney general, then why has he not fired him?
The president's made his viewpoint very clearly known, and I don't have any personnel announcements at this point.
Maria, we reached out to the Department of Justice earlier today on all of this. So far, they are not commenting on the latest diss by the president against his attorney general. Maria?
Well, a couple of things, Blake. I mean, I think that if he were to fire Jeff Sessions, it would be a long time before he got his pick in there as Attorney General, because, of course, it would be a long process and the left might not confirm him. And it's interesting to hear Trey Gowdy say he could have chosen somebody else. I believe Trey Gowdy wanted the job.
Trey Gowdy is a career prosecutor. Trey Gowdy is going to be leaving Congress in November, and there are many questions about Trey Gowdy's future, exactly what kind of job he might hold, whether he comes into the administration, maybe somewhere along the court system. That is a question for Trey Gowdy much further down the line. But the president had Trey Gowdy stepping up for him today in one aspect, and then again in another, Gowdy raising questions because Gowdy was one of those who saw the documents about the informant, or the spy, as the president refers to it as. And Trey Gowdy said the FBI did the absolute proper thing, which has led to questions about why the president continues to refer to this as Spygates. Maria?
Blake, thank you. Blake Berman at the White House. Meanwhile, the Department of Justice Inspector General Michael Horowitz will be testifying before Congress next week on his report on the FBI handling of the Clinton email probe. Could this report take the heat off of Attorney General Sessions? From former DOJ official Tom Dupree joining me now. Good to see you, sir. Thanks for joining us. Your expectations for this IG report?
Maria, I think this IG report has the potential to be a bombshell. I think depending on what the IG finds went on behind the scenes in 2016, it has the potential for changing the narrative a bit. It obviously will not shut down the Mueller investigation, but depending on what the IG finds, it very well could change the political conversation we're having. I think the White House views this at least as having the potential to turn the tables a bit, to put the spotlight off of the White House and the campaign staff and instead put it on the Justice Department and what went on behind closed doors in 2016.
Well, we know that the last IG report recommended criminal charges against Andrew McCabe, the #2 guy at the FBI. Will we see criminal referrals in this IG report because of the FBI's handling of the Clinton email investigation?
Yeah, look, this is an IG who is clearly not afraid to throw some punches. He is not afraid to make strong recommendations.
Very independent.
He's absolutely independent. I think that's something that a lot of people had questions about originally. They said, is this, an Obama appointee? Is this a holdover guy? Does he have the credibility and the independence to render an independent verdict? And I think his work so far shows that he does. So I think I and many other folks are going to be very, very interested in what he reports next.
But what about the accountability here? Where does this go then? I mean, we saw criminal charges referred against Andrew McCabe, but now it's up to a judge in Washington, right? I mean, how do we know that there will be accountability for wrongdoing during the 2016 election?
Well, ultimately, that's a decision that would be made by prosecutors. I think what they would do is they would look at what the IG finds, they would look at the evidence that he turns up, and then they would make a judgment as to whether that warrants actually bringing a criminal prosecution. I think one difference is that normally when prosecutors make a charging decision, they're doing it on the basis of evidence that is non-public. In this case, what's going to be very interesting, Maria, is that the IG is probably going to lay out all of his evidence. So the American people effectively will be looking over the prosecutor's shoulders and saying, hey, this looks like there might be something here. Why are you not going to indict?
What an incredible story, meanwhile, around Jeff Sessions. The president tweeting out, I wish I did. Do you agree with my analysis that if the president were to fire Jeff Sessions, it's going to be a long time before he gets his guy in there?